She stood at his doorstep, rain soaking her clothes, tears mingling with raindrops on her face. "Please, just tell me why you've been avoiding me for months," she pleaded. Mark gripped the doorframe, his knuckles white, the weight of his unspoken truth crushing him. Finally, he looked into her eyes and whispered, "Because looking at you hurts too much." If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more emotional journeys that remind us how complex human connections can be. The first time Mark Davis saw Ellie Chen moving boxes into the apartment across the hall, his 5-year-old daughter Lily was tugging at his hand, late for kindergarten. He'd meant to introduce himself properly later, maybe offer help with the unpacking or bring over one of his mediocre homemade lasagnas as a welcome gift. That's what neighbors did, right? At least, that's what his late wife Sophia would have done. But life as a single dad working from home while raising a spirited kindergartner had a way of consuming every spare minute. Days passed, then weeks, with nothing more than polite nods exchanged in the hallway. Mark noticed things about Ellie in these brief encounters: her warm smile that reached her eyes, the colorful scarves she wore regardless of season, how she always bent down to Lily's level when saying hello. "Daddy, Miss Ellie has pretty hair like Mommy did," Lily observed one evening after they'd passed Ellie in the lobby. Mark felt that familiar tightness in his chest. Lily was right. Ellie's long dark hair did resemble Sophia's, though Sophia had worn hers in a perpetual messy bun while Ellie's cascaded down her back in neat waves. "Yes, sweetie. I suppose she does," he managed to reply, quickening their pace toward the elevator. 3 months after Ellie moved in, Mark was struggling through another sleepless night. Sophia had been gone for 18 months, but grief still ambushed him at unexpected moments. Tonight, it was the discovery of one of her earrings behind the bathroom radiator that had unraveled him. He sat on his small balcony at 2 a.m., nursing a glass of whiskey, when soft music drifted from the adjacent balcony. "Can't sleep either?" Ellie's voice startled him. She was leaning against her railing, wrapped in a fluffy robe, a steaming mug in her hands. "Not tonight," Mark admitted. "Me neither. First anniversary of my divorce being finalized," she said with a hollow laugh. "Not exactly celebration-worthy, but significant nonetheless." Something about the darkness and their mutual insomnia made conversation easier. They talked until the sky began to lighten, about everything and nothing: her work as a children's book illustrator, his struggles with Lily's recent nightmares, their shared love of 80s music and terrible sci-fi movies. For the first time since Sophia died, Mark felt that peculiar lightness that comes from connecting with someone new. After that night, a friendship blossomed. Ellie started dropping by with art supplies for Lily. Mark fixed the leaky faucet in Ellie's kitchen. They began sharing meals, take-out on his balcony or homemade stir-fry on hers while Lily colored at the coffee table. Ellie never pushed for details about Sophia, but listened attentively when Mark volunteered them. She shared her own story of a marriage that had slowly suffocated under the weight of unspoken expectations and diverging dreams. "Daddy, is Miss Ellie your girlfriend?" Lily asked one Sunday morning as they prepared pancakes for their now traditional weekend brunch with Ellie. The question caught Mark off guard. "No, sweetheart. Miss Ellie is our friend. But you smile different when she's here. Like in the pictures with Mommy." Children saw everything. Mark had been so focused on managing his daughter's grief that he hadn't fully acknowledged his own healing, or the role Ellie was playing in it. The realization unsettled him. When Ellie arrived an hour later, bearing fresh berries and a new coloring book for Lily, Mark found himself noticing things he'd been subconsciously cataloging for months: the dimple that appeared only on her right cheek when she laughed, the way she absently tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, how her presence had somehow become essential to the rhythm of their weekends. "Everything okay?" Ellie asked, catching his stare across the table. "Perfect," he lied, passing the syrup. That night, after Lily was asleep, Mark pulled out the box of Sophia's things he kept in his closet. Among the photographs and mementos was their wedding album. He traced Sophia's radiant smile with his finger, the guilt rising like bile in his throat. How could he be developing feelings for someone else when Sophia had been his entire world for over a decade? The next morning, when Ellie texted to see if he and Lily wanted to join her for a walk in the park, Mark made an excuse about work deadlines. When she knocked on his door that evening with leftover cookies from her baking session with her nieces, he sent Lily to accept them with a message that he wasn't feeling well. Days turned into weeks. Mark constructed an elaborate scaffolding of excuses, work projects, Lily's activities, visits to his parents, anything to avoid being alone with Ellie. He still saw her in passing, of course. Their apartments were directly across from each other. But he mastered the art of the hurried greeting, the quick escape, the convenient phone call that prevented real conversation. "Daddy, why don't we see Miss Ellie anymore?" Lily asked repeatedly, her lower lip trembling. "Did she stop liking us?" "No, sweetheart. Grown-ups just get busy sometimes," he would answer, the lie bitter on his tongue. In truth, Mark was terrified. Not of Ellie, but of what she represented, moving forward, opening his heart again, the possibility of more loss. Every time he looked at her, he saw both possibility and betrayal. It was easier to look away. Ellie tried. She left notes under his door, sent casual texts checking in, even enlisted Lily's teacher, whom she'd befriended during school pickups when helping Mark, to relay messages. But eventually, her efforts tapered off. The hurt in her eyes when they passed in the hallway became resignation, then carefully constructed indifference. 3 months into his self-imposed isolation, Mark was folding laundry when Lily burst into tears over a torn drawing. "Miss Ellie could fix it," she wailed. "She knows how to make broken things pretty again." The simple truth in his daughter's words cracked something open in Mark's chest. Ellie did know how to make broken things beautiful again, including him and Lily. And he had pushed her away because he was afraid of that very gift. That night, after tucking Lily in, Mark stood in his darkened living room, staring at Ellie's apartment across the hall. Her lights were on, shadows moving behind the curtains. Before he could talk himself out of it, he grabbed his keys and walked the 15 steps to her door. His knock was answered with silence. He knocked again, louder. Finally, the door opened, revealing Ellie in paint-splattered overalls, her hair piled messily atop her head, a wary expression on her face. "Mark," she said flatly. Not a question, not a welcome. "I've been an idiot," he blurted out. "That's not news," she replied, but didn't close the door. "Can I come in? Please?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her apartment smelled of turpentine and cinnamon, an odd but fitting combination. Canvases were propped against every wall, vibrant landscapes and whimsical children's illustrations bringing color to the space. "You've been busy," he observed lamely, gesturing to the artwork. "That's what happens when you suddenly have a lot of free time on your hands." The edge in her voice was justified. Mark took a deep breath. "I owe you an explanation. And an apology." "You don't owe me anything, Mark. We were neighbors who became friends for a while. That's all." "No, it wasn't all," he said quietly. "And that's why I ran." Ellie crossed her arms, waiting. "When Sophia died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief and responsibility toward Lily. I was okay with that. It felt appropriate. Like the proper tribute to what we had." Mark paced the small living room, struggling to articulate feelings he'd barely acknowledged to himself. "Then you moved in, and suddenly I was feeling things I didn't want to feel. Noticing things. Looking forward to things. And that was bad because—" Ellie prompted when he faltered. "Because looking at you hurts," he admitted, his voice breaking. "It hurts because when I see you, I see possibilities I thought were gone forever. I see a future that doesn't include Sophia. And choosing that future feels like choosing to leave her behind." Ellie's expression softened slightly. Mark, moving forward doesn't mean forgetting Sophia. She'll always be Lily's mother and a huge part of your life story. I know that intellectually. But my heart hasn't caught up. He sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. The day Lily asked if you were my girlfriend, I panicked. She said I smiled differently around you, the same way I used to smile with Sophia. And she was right. That terrified me. Ellie sat beside him, careful to maintain distance. So your solution was to cut me out completely? Without even talking to me? I never claimed it was a good solution, Mark said ruefully. I just couldn't bear to look at you and feel both the possibility and the guilt simultaneously. It was easier to look away. Easier for whom? Not for Lily, who keeps asking me if she did something wrong whenever I run into her. Not for me, left wondering what happened to our friendship. Ellie's voice wavered. And I don't think it's been easier for you either, has it? Mark shook his head. I've been miserable. Lily's been miserable. I told myself I was protecting us both, but really, I was just hiding. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of unspoken feelings filling the space between them. Finally, Ellie spoke. I lost someone too, you know. Not to death, but to indifference, which has its own kind of pain. My ex-husband decided one day that our life together wasn't what he wanted anymore. Just like that, 8 years, dismissed. She tucked her hair behind her ear, that familiar gesture making Mark's chest ache. For a long time, I was afraid to care about anyone again. Then you and Lily came along with your pancake sundaes and your terrible dad jokes and Lily's beautiful imagination. She turned to face him fully. I'm not asking you to be ready for something you're not ready for. But don't push people away because you're afraid of what might happen. That's not living, Mark. And Sophia wouldn't want that for you or Lily. The mention of Sophia's name from Ellie's lips should have triggered his defenses, but instead, it felt right somehow, as if the two most significant women in his adult life were no longer separated into before and after, but connected in the continuum of his journey. I miss you, he admitted. We both do. I miss you too, Ellie replied. Both of you. Can we start over? Maybe more slowly this time, with me being less of an avoidant mess? A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. I don't know about starting over. I think we just need to continue from where we left off, but with more honesty. I can do honesty, Mark promised. Starting with this, looking at you hurts, but not looking at you hurts more. The rain started sometime during their conversation, pattering against the windows as they talked into the night. They covered everything, his fears, her insecurities, boundaries they both needed, what to tell Lily. By the time Mark realized how late it had gotten, the storm had intensified. I should get back. Mrs. Patel from downstairs is sitting with Lily, he said reluctantly. Ellie walked him to the door. Will I see you tomorrow? Both of you? Definitely. Lily will be ecstatic. As Mark turned to leave, Ellie caught his hand. One more thing. When you're ready, truly ready, not just willing to push through the guilt, I'll be here. No rush, no pressure. Some journeys can't be hurried. Mark squeezed her hand, overwhelmed by her understanding. Thank you. He crossed the hallway to his own apartment, feeling lighter than he had in months. Mrs. Patel reported that Lily had slept peacefully, and after seeing her out, Mark checked on his daughter. She was clutching the stuffed elephant Ellie had given her, her face serene in sleep. The next morning, Mark woke to Lily bouncing on his bed, earlier than usual for a Saturday. Daddy! It's pancake day. Can we invite Miss Ellie? Please, please, please. Mark smiled, pulling his daughter into a hug. Actually, I already talked to Miss Ellie last night. She's going to come over for pancakes, just like before. Lily's squeal of delight was worth every moment of the difficult conversation with Ellie. As his daughter raced off to select her outfit for their guest, Mark felt a curious sensation in his chest, a lightness he'd almost forgotten. It wasn't the absence of grief, which he suspected would always be part of him, but the presence of something else alongside it. Hope, perhaps. Or simply the recognition that his heart, like his life, was spacious enough to hold both sorrow and joy. When Ellie knocked on their door 2 hours later, Lily flung it open before Mark could reach it. "Miss Ellie. Daddy said you're coming back to us," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around Ellie's waist. Over Lily's head, Ellie's eyes met Mark's, a question in them. "We missed you," he said simply. "I missed you too," she replied, and this time, Mark didn't look away from the future he saw reflected in her smile. The following months brought a gradual rebuilding of their relationship, but with new awareness and intentionality. Mark began seeing a grief counselor, something he'd resisted since Sophia's death. Ellie was patient, never pushing for more than he could give, becoming an integral part of their lives again while respecting the space Mark still needed. They established new traditions. Sunday brunches remained, but they added Wednesday night board games and monthly museum visits with Lily. Mark learned to talk about Sophia without feeling like he was betraying her memory, even sharing stories with Ellie about their life together. 6 months after their reconciliation, Mark found himself standing on Ellie's balcony during another sleepless night, mirroring their first real conversation. "Can't sleep?" she asked, joining him with her ever-present mug of tea. "Just thinking," he replied. "Dangerous pastime," she teased. "I know." He smiled, then grew serious. "I've been thinking about what you said that night when we finally talked. About being ready, truly ready." Ellie set her mug down carefully. "And? I think I am. Ready, that is." Mark turned to face her fully. "Not because I've forgotten Sophia or stopped missing her, but because I've realized something important. Loving you doesn't diminish what I had with her. It honors it. She taught me how to love, how to be a partner. Those aren't lessons I should lock away." Tears glistened in Ellie's eyes. "Are you sure? Looking at you still hurts sometimes," he admitted. "But it's a different kind of hurt now, like muscles stretching after being still too long. Growing pains, maybe." "I can live with growing pains," she whispered, stepping closer. When he finally kissed her, under the same stars that had witnessed their first conversation, Mark felt Sophia's presence not as a barrier between them, but as a blessing. The woman he had loved and lost had prepared his heart for this moment, this woman, this new chapter. Later that night, as Ellie slept beside him, Mark gazed at her peaceful face and felt a profound gratitude. His journey through grief had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led him here, to a place where looking at love no longer hurt more than it healed. In the morning, Lily found them making breakfast together in the kitchen and simply said, finally, with all the exasperation a 6-year-old could muster, making them both laugh until tears came. Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. There were still difficult days, Sophia's birthday, their anniversary, holidays that highlighted her absence. But now Mark faced them with both Lily and Ellie by his side, his past and his future no longer at war within him. A year after that night on the balcony, Mark proposed to Ellie in the park where they had taken their first walk together with Lily. A year after that night on the balcony, Mark proposed to Ellie in the park where they had taken their first walk together with Lily. His daughter had helped plan the moment, proudly carrying the small velvet box in her pocket until the perfect moment when they reached the fountain where they'd once spent an afternoon making wishes with pennies. "Remember when we threw coins in here last summer?" Mark asked, taking Ellie's hand. "Of course. Lily wished for a puppy, and you wished for..." Ellie stopped, realizing he had never shared his wish. "I wished for courage," Mark said softly. "The courage to do this." He nodded to Lily, who solemnly presented the box to Ellie, her small face serious with the importance of her role. Ellie's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a delicate ring with 3 small stones, one for each of them, Mark explained. "I'm not asking you to replace anyone or be someone you're not," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I'm asking you to join our family, exactly as you are. The woman who taught me that looking away hurts more than looking forward. Yes, Ellie whispered through tears. 1,000 times yes. They were married the following spring in a small ceremony in the courtyard of their apartment building, where they had first exchanged those awkward hallway nods. Lily served as both flower girl and ring bearer, proudly walking down the makeshift aisle in a dress she and Ellie had designed together. During the ceremony, Mark had arranged for a moment to honor Sophia. A chair sat empty in the front row, with her favorite flowers placed upon it. When the officiant invited him to speak about this gesture, Mark's voice carried clearly to all their gathered loved ones. Some people might think it strange to acknowledge my late wife at my wedding to Ellie, he began. But Ellie understands what took me too long to learn, that love isn't a limited resource. It grows and changes and makes room for what we need. Sophia will always be part of our family story. And today, that story begins a new chapter. Ellie reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly as she added her own words. I never met Sophia, but I see her every day in Lily's smile and in the man Mark is. I'm not here to replace her, but to help carry her love forward with us. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtyard as they exchanged their vows, promising not a perfect journey but a true one, with all its complexities and challenges embraced rather than avoided. 2 years into their marriage, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl who brought chaos and joy in equal measure to their expanding family. Lily, now 8, took her role as big sister with tremendous seriousness, reading to the babies from the very books Ellie had illustrated. On the twins' first birthday, Mark found Ellie in their nursery after the party, gazing at the sleeping infants. Penny for your thoughts, he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I was just thinking about how life circles back on itself sometimes, she murmured. 3 years ago, you couldn't look at me because it hurt too much. Now look at us. Mark rested his chin on her shoulder, taking in the sight of their children. Lily sprawled in the reading chair where she had insisted on staying, just until the babies fall asleep, and the twins in their cribs, tiny hands occasionally twitching in their dreams. I was so afraid of betraying Sophia by moving forward, he reflected. I never considered that standing still might have been the greater betrayal, of her, of Lily, of myself. And of me, Ellie added with a gentle nudge. Especially of you, he agreed, turning her in his arms. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when I was doing my best to push you away. Some things are worth fighting for, she said simply. Even when they hurt. Later that night, after checking on all 3 children one last time, they stood on their balcony, the same one where they'd first really talked, now part of the larger apartment they'd created by combining their 2 units after the wedding. The stars above were the same, but everything else had transformed. Do you know what Lily asked me today? Ellie said, leaning against the railing. Knowing our daughter, something profound and slightly uncomfortable, Mark laughed. She asked if I ever feel sad that I'm not her first mom. Those were her words. Mark's breath caught. What did you tell her? I told her that I feel incredibly lucky to be her second mom. That some people go their whole lives with just one person loving them that way, but she has had 2. And that makes her doubly blessed, not half-loved. Mark pulled her close, overwhelmed by the simple wisdom of her response. You're amazing with her. With all of us. We're amazing together, Ellie corrected. All of us, including the Sophia-shaped space that will always be part of this family. As they stood there under the night sky, Mark reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From avoiding his neighbor because looking at her hurt too much, to building a life where looking at her, truly seeing her, had become his greatest joy. Grief had not disappeared, it had transformed. It now existed alongside love, neither diminishing the other, both essential threads in the tapestry of their family story. The pain of looking forward had become the gift of seeing clearly, past, present, and future all held in the same loving gaze. What are you thinking about? Ellie asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Mark smiled, no longer afraid of the truth in his heart. I'm thinking that looking at you is the easiest thing I've ever done. And the most worthwhile. In the nursery behind them, one of the twins began to fuss. Together, they turned toward the sound, toward their family, toward their future, hand in hand, eyes wide open. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us all that healing isn't linear, love isn't limited, and sometimes the most painful moments lead to our greatest joys. Remember, it's okay to honor your past while still embracing your future. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply look forward, even when it hurts.